I'm Narelle Todd.
And I'm Essie Susan Smith.
We are the self-publishing author and marketing duo that has sold over 2 million books. But we didn't start out knowing how to sell books. Fast forward past many failed promotions and a lot of lessons learned, you will see how we went from self-publishing newbies to hitting the New York Times bestsellers list and making the USA Today bestsellers list 19 times and counting. We created the Get My Book Out There podcast to give you simple yet effective marketing strategies to increase readership and book sales, so you know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, as well as some tips for staying mentally and physically well.
Let's get started.
And today we have with us Jill Wallace. Hi, Jill.
Sorry. Hi, guys. Lovely to see you both.
Yes, we're so excited you're here, Jill.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So we can tell from your background that there's maybe a South African vibe going on, or you just happen to like zebras or zebras.
You are, I say zebra. Susan says zebra. So it's all good.
Oh, good. So we can probably understand each other with you being South African. And I'm Australian, of course. So, yeah, those Americans, they say all sorts of weird things.
I know.
No comment.
Yeah, you're outnumbered, Susan.
I am today. I've got my spaceship, so we can always, flash you guys out.
I wonder if there's accents in space. That's for another podcast.
Yeah, that's another one.
Oh, interesting.
So Jill is the author of 2 books. One is War Serenade. How fabulous is that? And Zebra or Zebra, depending where you're from, which is this one. And they're both set in South Africa. So we wanted to have a chat with Jill and talk a little bit more about how she came to write these books firstly, and what's the experience been as writing about, in some ways they're memoirs, kind of biographical in nature, like they're based on true stories. Is that right? So tell us more about it.
Yes,
so let's say
inspired by.
Inspired by. Cool.
Yes.
So, South Africa is the common theme running through them. So what's your background? Yes. South African. I've already let that one out of the bag.
Yes. Well, my mom, it was all my mother's fault. I come from a family who loved to write, and my mother loved telling stories, and she told them brilliantly. She never wrote them, but she told them. And she told me the story about friends of my family who, my uncle Greg was a pilot, and he used to be an opera singer, and he was shot down by my dad. He and my dad were on opposite sides of the war, but they became best friends after the war and share scars. Look at this one. This is what you did to me. This is what you did to me, because Italian and, of course, South Africa fought with the British. So they were friends of my folks, and my mom would tell me the story about how they met. He was a prisoner of war, and she saw him and he saw her at the camp, and he had to sing and he had to find a way to be able to see her again. And he saw her and she saw him. She was in the audience and he was on stage, and they had this instant connection. And he broke out of prison to see her and broke back in again so that he wouldn't be caught. And I thought this was such a cool story. It was my best fairy tale ever. And it kind of churned in my head for years and years, and I knew I needed to share the story. It was such a beautiful one, and it took me 4 decades, but finally I decided to write it as a screenplay, which I did, and I learned a lot, and it was an interesting experience. And when the movies weren't made, I wrote a book. And my friends, I was nurtured by a group of writers that I was lucky enough to find in my area, and they really nurtured me and helped me, because I hadn't a clue. I'd never written a book before, and they were wonderful. So what happened was, when I originally wrote this as a screenplay, it was a beautiful story. It was the story of my Uncle Greg and my Auntie May, and it was just beautiful. The prisoner of war camp was lovely. They used to have Italian food, and the brass used to eat at the mess because the food was so delicious. And so when I had this as a screenplay, the first producer that I had said, this is a lovely story, but Hollywood doesn't like lovely stories. We need conflict. And I agonized over that for too long because I wanted to tell their story as it was. And then I thought, well, you stupid girl, you only have one shot. Do it. And I changed their names, and that really liberated me, because then I was able to make him a little bit more of a womanizer and her a little bit more promiscuous, and then the story took hold of me. I had very little to do with it other than put my fingers on keys, and they told me what they wanted to do. So it's wonderful. I think, and I've seen golfers, I don't golf, but I've seen golfers who hit that sweet spot. And I think that's how writing feels when you know that it's right for you. And that's how I felt when I wrote for Serenade.
Oh, I love that.
Unfortunately, I lost my, nobody was alive to see the story. You know, we'd lost everybody by that time.
Yeah. So it's a way to keep that, as you say, the family story going by writing it down. It's obviously morphed a little bit.
Honestly,
but...
yeah, it's morphed probably out of all proportion, all told, because it had to be, I guess, to be able to be as exciting and full of conflict as it needed to be for fiction.
Yeah.
It's still, I mean, it's such an incredible story, you know, just the way it was told to you, and the fact that you're able to grasp something, you know, and just bring it to life so that everybody else can share it. And it is a beautiful story.
Thank you, Susan. I wept a lot when I wrote the story, and when I did away with people that I really didn't want to go. But I've got some questions about that in my questions for podcasters, so they might be able to see what sort of questions would be provocative for both the books.
Now, did you ever share with your mom your love for writing and your hope to be able to one day, you know?
I did.
Share this story?
Yeah, my mom was super cool, but she was absolutely intolerant of anything that took a long time. She had no desire for anything that had any. And so every time I'd go home, because I'd go home every year when we lived in America, I'd go home for about 6 weeks, and I'd say, okay, Mom, I want to read you. And she's like, oh, not again. You know, she just had no tolerance for anything. And 3 years to do something was beyond her ken. She just, no, she never did see the finished product.
How long have you been in the US? Do you think of yourself more as American now or South African?
You know, I think I was there for half my life in South Africa, and here for just a bit over half my life. But I think I will always be South African, because that's my heart and what I know, and that's, I think, what I write about. But I think in my new series, my American will come out a bit, because that I am kind of bi-coastal, bi-country. I do feel like I have one foot in both continents, because I've been here a long time, and I'm an American citizen, and I'm happy to be here. But I'll always be African, South African.
How is that?
And I'm married to South Africans, so.
And when you're writing, you know, both the books you have currently out are both set in South Africa. Is it a way of going home and keeping in touch with that side of you, or do you need to go back and rediscover South Africa, or how does that all work to pull it all in together? Is it because you're writing about past, so it's okay to stay in the memory of it rather than the modern day? How does that work?
I think you've nailed it, because I really don't know what modern South Africa feels like. I know what it is because my dearest friends are still there, and some of my family, but I have to live in the past because that's what I know. That's what I've experienced. So I feel comfortable there. It's such a, South Africa is such a complex, interwoven labyrinth of cultures, and it's changed so much since I was there, that it's a country that I don't know about. I know only what I grew up in, and it gives me joy to write about it because it's an extension of me. So if I were to write a contemporary story, it would be in America, because that's what I know. So I suppose therein lies the feat. on different continents.
Yeah. The reason I asked that and just wanted to explore that a little bit was that in Zebra, you obviously are touching on apartheid and, white, black,
Yes.
South Africa. As a writer,
Yes.
were you concerned about going there? Was, about how readers may perceive that? Just step us through that and, as a writer, how you kind of thought about or thought through that.
The story was really my husband's, because that was literally his life. He grew up in the hotel, in a remote hotel. He had a best friend who looked after him and taught him nature. And the army did use him, my husband, to garner information from various sectors for their benefit. And it wasn't anything you volunteered for. They were conscripted to fight. So these boys of ours who grew up had a hard time because they were always at war and protecting the borders. So it was a difficult thing, because it was important to me that I broach the perspective of the white and the Zulu, and that we as a reader understand the complexities of both people and why they are as they are, and why we don't understand each other a lot of the time. So it was a fine line. And when I proposed this book to my editor, who was exceptionally straight-laced and conscious of anything that might be even minutely unkosher, she said to me, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I said, you know what? It's history, and it feels like a story that needs to be told, because ultimately it is indeed the Black people who won South Africa. And it's been under Black rule since 1992. But there was a whole long way they had to go and we had to go to be able to get there. And honestly, now when I go home, or I was last home about 5 years ago, but it's so, people treat each other so respectfully. They didn't when I was there. There was a definite differentiation between the English and the Afrikaans. There was a huge chasm between us, and how we, as English-speaking South Africans, treated the Black people in our country, and how the Afrikaans-speaking did. And now that's not there anymore. It's truly the Rainbow Nation, as was their goal, has definitely melded people of all cultures and natures. Even the language now includes, and the slang words includes all of the languages, as opposed to just English and Afrikaans, which I was used to. So I hope my goal was to let people know that there are two sides to every story, and that true friendship can overcome anything, even that great divide, which we've really won.
Yeah. I thought it was a phenomenal story in the way you were able to look at the two cultures and just bring those out. And I certainly get what you're saying about so much misunderstanding can happen simply because of a cultural difference. You may not necessarily be wanting to cause offense to somebody, but you might unknowingly say something, and in their culture that's not what you would say, or
exactly.
Yeah. Even I know, just say on a superficial level, whenever I travel to the States, I have to be mindful of, well, what are the things that I can say here that I would say in Australia and would be quite normal, but in America,
think about it.
Yeah, in some states, particularly in the southern states, if I say certain things that I would just say here, and nothing bad, but it's just words and terminologies and phrase. Yeah, some people get really offended, and you just go, "Oh no, that was one of those. Shouldn't have said that."
Well, if it helps, the Americans feel the same way, because some of the words that we take, like, we laugh about this, but the fanny packs. Okay. All right.
Exactly.
I have to mention that, because here it's like, for us, it's like, oh yeah, it's that little, purse that
That's
you
the most
strap around your
shocking
waist.
thing I've ever heard.
And yet we mention it every day, and it's like everyone's like, what? And so,
just crack up.
You guys laugh about it. And we're like, what's so funny about wearing a purse?
Yes, we do find that funny, because it's like they don't even know what fanny means over here. We just let them all talk. But
Well, you
Australians are
guys
born that
also
way.
get offended by socks and Crocs, so.
Well, I think the whole world should be offended by
Right.
anybody in Crocs or sandals with socks. Some things should never be
That's
funnied, and that's
funny.
one of them for sure. So, sorry, Jill, back to you and not American-Australian relations. Uh, South Africa, as you say, is has
Which are strained,
come
we know.
not quite as strained as it is with France at the moment, but that's another thing. Um, it's a complex culture, and when you sat down to write that culture, do you just kind of pour it all out and whatever comes on the page is what your inspiration is, or do you actually stop and go, oh, I can't say that, or that's not politically correct, or do you have
I
things that stop you, or is it just like
do you
this is what it is,
censor?
this is the story?
I did it what it is, but I didn't just do it from my perspective. I did a lot of research to make sure that was so. But yeah, and it upsets me that history is being so pulled down and obliterated, or potentially obliterated, because it's only through history that we learn as human beings. I mean, we can't possibly, without history, we wouldn't be able to advance at all, because we make mistakes and that's how we learn. So I felt like, and I have to say, my editor, who is so prim and prissy, was perfectly okay with the end result. So that made me happy, because she knew that it was coming from a place of understanding or love, or it was coming from a good place. It was never coming from a place of ugliness, or there was ugliness, but it wasn't coming from the protagonists or each other. So I hope as a reader you found that to be so.
Yeah, definitely.
Good.
I'm
I know.
always fascinated by culture, and just a personal story in here. When I lived in England for 3 years, back in my young years, a lot of Australians go overseas for a couple of years. We do the whole backpacking thing, and I was one of those. And I remember arriving in London, and I had 2 cases. I still can't remember why I had that much, but anyway, I had 2 suitcases, and I was at the bottom of the stairs in the London tube station, and I was just going, oh, the lift elevator was broken, and so it was just the stairs, and this punk rocker came past, and I was from the Australian country. I'd never seen anybody who looked like this before, and this couple of punk rocker guys came past, and their hair was up, and all the bright colors, and they were pierced all over their face, and I just remember going, oh my gosh, and it was as in reacting in a bad way, and being scared. And then one of the dudes went, oh, I'll get that for you, love. And he took my case up, and one of the other guys took it up. They carried it up to the top of the stairs. And I remember it being a pivotal moment of going, people, it's okay to look different, to be different. This is a cultural thing where I was coming from, where everybody looked the same pretty much. And now I was in this whole great big world.
Yes.
And I just remember going, I judged these guys solely on how they looked. And it was and I felt,
So
there
true.
was like a change. And I was just, and culture has always
Yes.
fascinated me ever since. And cultures of countries, but cultures of people. And, so groups and tribes and all of, we all have a collective way of looking at the world. And I find it fascinating how
We do.
if you can find a common language or a way to communicate, we all at heart have the same wants and desires. We want to be accepted. We want to be loved.
That's so true.
Yeah. Anyway, I just
Yes.
thought I would share that.
It's so true.
It's funny.
That's lovely. Thank you.
I read Jill's reader magnet that she has, which I want everyone to know, to go to jillwallace.com and make sure that
Thank you.
sign up so that you can read her reader magnet. But the reader magnet, what I loved about it was that breakdown of the mother and the daughter, and that perception, that wall that was between the housekeeper and the mother, and the daughter is like, no, she's part of the family. And by the end of the evening, that's exactly what they were. they had broken down the barriers.
They were
and
women having
realized
fun.
they were women having fun. And it, reminded me so much of, I could relate to it based on my own relationship with, playing cards with my grandmother. And, it was just such a unique moment. And it was just that little scene right there. It just gave you a snapshot of what perceptions that you can have. And like Narelle, all you got to do right now is walk through a high school and you'll get all of this diversity. It's like, I had to laugh when you were talking about, the difference with punk rockers and never singing. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if anyone ever wants to experience anything, just walk through a high school, because you'll see all that diversity there. And, you just embrace it. And with your book, Zebra, as I would say, it was that bond between two boys that formed a friendship. And what that friendship could be is other prejudices, and by prejudices, I mean not just by color, but by, perceived thoughts, by standards, social standards. When they're erased, it comes down just to these two boys. And that's, you were able to capture that.
Thank you, Susan. And it's true, because we are all the same. We all had, just like Narelle said, we all have the same needs and the same desires and the same wish to be accepted and the same need to learn. And it's sad. I mean, there's tragic things happen during that era. There's no question. Horrible, disgusting, awful things. But I can't change that. I really wanted to find some good. And that was the basis of the story, because Ethel genuinely found that friendship. So it was something that I could take and then build from there. And anyway, I'm just thrilled that you felt when you read it, because that's always my aim.
So where next for you, Jill?
That was going to be my question.
Two absolutely fabulous stories are in South Africa. You get to see all sorts of good, all sorts of things about South Africa, and I love that part, the countryside and that. But what's next? Are you writing something?
I'm delving into very new territory, because I'm going into my imagination, which I've had to do, obviously, but I've always had a story that I've had to be somewhat true to. So this is completely new for me, because first of all, it's a series. And second of all, it's just me. But I thought I would draw from, because write what you know. And I was air hostess for 4 years internationally. And I thought, what a cool thing would it be if these air hostesses in their late 50s got together and discovered that each one of them had slept on a 747 with the Zulu Golf, whatever, specifics. And in that crew rest, because we used to go on very long flights, because at that time we had to fly around the bulge of Africa. So our shortest flights were 12 hours. And just in the air, let alone from when you signed in. So you had to have your 2 hours of rest, and you were so depleted by the time you'd served your 300 passengers just on the right-hand side of the plane, and you just died for 2 hours, and then you got up and served, and it was an awful job, but it was a fabulous way to see the world. So in this crew rest, they will dream about history, about something in history. My first one, or maybe not, might be my last one, but will be The Ballerina and the Beggar. And we go back to Moscow, 1887, where Swan Lake is being performed for the first time. And how the ballerina and the beggar have this magical thing, and it can never, never, never be. And they go off knowing that they're never going to be together, and it breaks their heart. And when the air hostess wakes up from her sleep, she has a number in her head, and she doesn't know what the number is. And she realizes towards the end of the flight that it's a seat number. And she goes to have a look, and it's the same connection as she witnessed since she was the ballerina. And he's no longer the beggar, he is somebody else. And then we hear how their lives, how they get a second chance to spend the rest of their lives together.
Oh, that is
so
fabulous.
And each one will have her own story. So
Love
I'm
it.
excited about it. So,
Yeah.
and
All right. I have a
excited.
question. I know you have some girlfriends in South Africa that you would
Yes.
go visit. Or could
Yes.
they play any part as being part of the women?
You know, I most surely they will. But my one friend's husband is very neurotic, so I may have to change her name. I think you should cut that out just in case.
Well, they can have it. I mean, I've used my family and people I know as models. I'll call them models for my characters.
Yeah, models. I love
the
that.
fact that in one of my stories, of course, I have somebody who is a bail bondswoman, and my best friend happened to be a bail bondswoman at the time. And then my son, loves animals, and so one of my characters had to be like this one that loves animals. So you can still
Aw.
use them. But I was just curious because I know you've told us about how you met with your girlfriends and that you guys keep in touch and how that friendship formed. And
Oh yeah.
As soon as you told me about this, I had that vision of you and these girls being these women in this series.
I know it's gonna be fun. I'm excited. I've written a little bit dribs and drabs, but I'm gonna get my teeth stuck into it soon.
Yeah.
Well, you have to
And
now
that
that
need
you've given
to.
us all a teaser of it.
I know.
We want the story. We wish you well
Lovely.
on the writing journey. We can't wait to read
Thank
what you have for
you.
us next and to see what
Thank you
your
so much,
brain
both of you.
comes
It was
up with.
such a privilege.
Oh,
Well,
it's
I
our
want to make
pleasure.
sure that
I know
everybody
one never
gets a
knows.
chance.
I don't have a clue.
Yeah,
Yes,
to-
everybody will.
to get a
All
chance to
5
read
will
War
get a chance.
Serenade.
They'll get their own book.
Yes,
That's
let me
lovely,
show them
and I'm
again.
thrilled to bits that I got to spend some time with you both today.
You're
I
welcome.
have to
So,
say,
War Serenade is the first one. Make sure you go get that one. And Zebra or Zebra, depending where you are.
And don't forget to sign up at jillwallace.com
oh,
and check out her reader magnet and all of the other great stories that she's going to be coming out with.
Absolutely.
wow.
Thanks for spending time
Thank
with us,
you
Jill.
so much. Thank you, Nura. Thanks so much, both of you. It was a delight. Thank you. Cheers, cheers.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. You know we've got way more information we want to share with you to increase your book sales. So please come and join me at facebook.com. Get my book out there.